Hey everybody, I'm Bryan Grossman, executive editor at Sixty35 News Magazine. This is the 6035, the weekly show that recaps all you need to know in the news. Our guests in studio today are reporter Nick Raven and managing editor Helen Lewis, and we're here to talk about stuff. Hey, Nick and Helen, welcome to the 6035.
Thank you.
When I say stuff, I mean, I guess specifically our newest issue, which was written by Bill Forman, but Bill Forman doesn't live in the country. He's our music editor, and he's south of the equator somewhere right now. He was in the Galapagos because he talks a little bit about that. But
in the story, yeah.
Yeah, but he's, I think he's in Peru or Ecuador.
Ecuador.
Yeah. Okay. So to fill in for Bill, who's in Ecuador, we brought the next best thing.
Yes, exactly. Let's talk about transcendental experiments and stuff.
Yes. Nick Raven is here because you do have some knowledge. But let's set up the story. It's about artificial intelligence. Specifically, ChatGPT, which 99% of the people listening to this have probably heard of by now.
Maybe.
But not everybody. And Bill's approach, he looks at music a little bit. He looks at he has a conversation with artificial intelligence. He has artificial intelligence do some of his work for him.
Yes.
So why don't you explain, I guess, in a little more detail, because you've read this story. Is that right?
Yes.
And then talk about ChatGPT.
So in the beginning, there were zeros and ones. And then from there, they just and/or gates and stuff like that.
In the beginning,
yes.
God created zeros and ones.
Yes, it was very simple.
It works with our cover so well.
Yeah.
It does. I really love this divine hand of God reaching out with the machine. So the story is ChatGPT is a relatively new thing. Do you guys remember like Ask Jeeves and stuff that, where it was our chat bots, like you'd go on AOL Instant Messenger and they'd be like, give kind of prefabbed responses and stuff like that.
Yeah. Pre-Google even.
Pre-Google, yeah. So this is based OpenAI is the company. I believe they're based out of Britain. Microsoft just acquired it, and Bill talks about it in the article, but they just acquired this huge stake in them for like $10 billion because that's a big, and they're already unleashing parts of that, integrating it into their Bing service, which, I mean, I don't know who uses Bing, but Bing, but.
Could it be any easier?
No, yeah. So GPT-3, which is the newest version of their machine-learned thing that allows we can break into semantics of what AI is. I'm going to bring this coaster over here. There we go. It's generative pre-trained transformer. And it basically allows the AI to conjure sentences and thoughts, not really thoughts so much.
Careful.
Yes, I know. And it creates sentences and outlines and really just complex ideas. And so ChatGPT has really come around because it's kind of a user-friendly version. It's a chat window. So you create your account, you go on there, and you can have these conversations. We saw this kind of recently with Google and the Google Assistant and stuff like that, or Siri, where it's learning data and like it's gotten conversational not too terribly long ago, where you could ask it a question and then ask it something else, and it would add on to that as if it hadn't forgotten what you had just said. So it's like, who's Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan is so-and-so. How tall is he? And it's going to be like, he's this tall.
It knows you're talking about Jordan.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And like not Michael Williams or whoever.
Or even ask you, who are you talking about?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or, what are you talking about? Which is still Siri. Anyway, so ChatGPT is this huge new thing that people are using. Bill highlights a number of really cool ideas. He's talking about philosophy. They're having a conversation back and forth. He has him write a Nick Cave song because it's already grabbed all this information about what Nick Cave songs lyrics are. It's like, well, let me try my best to do that and kind of come to a hopefully deeper level than just these are the words that string together, but actually put what is the meaning behind it as well.
Which Nick Cave said is bullshit because so he basically said no computer could ever do what I do.
Right.
Because these are just words, not emotions, not experience, not heartbreak, all the things that human experience, right? So.
Right. And that's where we go back to this is not the catchphrase. It's not thinking. It's not an actual intelligence, right? It's just a complex set of scripting and machine learning to say that if you give it enough information, it says, this is what this thing is. If I tell it to draw a triangle, it's going to know what a triangle is.
I view it as sort of, and I'm no tech expert, but I view it as a internet scraper on steroids.
There's been some controversy around that. Not just that, but the image-based ones, which which
we're only talking about the chat part, right?
But at the same time, it's got to pull data from somewhere, right? You can't just. I mean, you could just sit there and like, okay,
it's like matter. It wasn't created from nothing.
Exactly.
Humans created this data that
it's using to then reference and build.
It's not
references
creating
on
its
top.
own data.
Exactly.
Right.
It's also not thinking. It's going through its processes and saying, hey, this is what this is based on all this information I already have.
Right.
So I'm just going to go this. It doesn't think on its own.
But the processes are getting much more elaborate and in-depth and human-like in a way because of how it's able to talk now.
Right. It's kind of like, I guess the closest analogy I could think of as the art cover. It's like if you can draw nature and leaves and stuff like that, that does not like make you God, right? Just because you can make something that looks like leaves realistically, you are replicating that experience. You are not going out there and synthesizing this biology to do photosynthesis and stuff like that. It's and that's what this is. It's kind of a smoke show to some extent, but it's so authentic. It's indistinguishable from magic, as Isaac Asimov once said in Bill Forman's article.
Yeah, and Bill also has it write a poem about a ham sandwich.
Yes.
A food critic who really likes a ham sandwich.
Yes.
And it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's your kind of poem, is what I would say.
Ouch. I thought it was pretty good for a robot.
Yeah.
But this is one small piece. You mentioned like the video. Let's just get to it. Let's talk.
Okay.
Let's talk about nothing forever.
we want to talk about Terminators.
No. I want to talk about nothing forever.
That is a Terminator on its own.
Because it's taking two of these concepts, AI concepts, and mashing them together.
Right.
Explain Nothing Forever.
Nothing Forever is an endlessly running Seinfeld parody that is procedurally done.
Yeah.
So the episodes are like a minute long each, something like that.
This is on Twitch.
This is on Twitch. Yeah, I don't have the URL in front of me, but if you just
go to
Google
Twitch
Nothing Forever,
Yeah,
go to the Twitch, and so it's generating. It's a primitive 3D display. It's got all four characters. It usually starts off with Jerry, quote unquote.
His name's Larry Fiendler.
Something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. George, Elaine, and Kramer, and Jerry with different names.
Yeah,
right?
it's Larry. It's Fred.
Yes.
For some reason, for George,
Zoltan and
Yvette and Zoltan or something.
Yvonne. Yes.
Yvonne. Sorry, yes.
And so it starts off. It's Jerry at the Larry at the microphone. He's telling jokes and
Which
all
are
of
not
the
jokes.
Well, sometimes they are.
I think I've counted two.
Yeah.
Over hours and hours.
You're like, I'm going to stop watching this now, or maybe
Not
in the
yet.
future.
Not
Not
yet.
quite. We can't cut it yet.
I gotta know what's gonna happen.
What's happening next?
Yeah.
And so he's telling a joke. Then it does a cut to an external shot of brownstones,
Right.
like in the show.
You hear a little bit of the music.
You hear a little bit of
Sort
that
of.
synthesized bass in there, and then it cuts to it's inside the apartment, and it's just the characters kind of like walking around
awkwardly.
Aimlessly.
Aimlessly. Sometimes they're running into each other.
Sometimes they vibrate in
each
front of
other.
the fridge.
Yeah,
Just like go like this in front of the fridge. That's
Sometimes the camera freezes on them and it
Yep.
just stays
And there's
there.
no dialogue.
There's no dialogue. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it'll cut, and then it cuts to the next episode.
Right.
And you just you can't stop. There's a microwave in there that's really loud.
And super popular.
Super popular.
with the viewers.
And alongside this, there's a chat window. If you're not familiar with Twitch, it's streaming live,
Right.
like news, except amazing.
Yeah.
And then alongside that, you'll have a chat, and people are just responding to everything that is happening.
Yes.
And it is beautiful, like, yay! And they're like memeing the individual lines of the dialogue and stuff like that.
this is my first experience with Twitch, so I thought that was
Same.
specific too. I thought people were really enthusiastic about the Seinfeld thing.
It happens
with everything.
everything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
Like, here's some paint drying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
when famously when they put Bob Ross on there,
Oh.
they would I don't know if it's still airing, but they would have like endless Bob Ross episodes.
The actual show.
The actual show,
Not an 8-bit.
I would
Yes.
be enthusiastic about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then people are talking, and it's like, oh yeah, go clean your brush, Bob.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
good.
That was
Yeah,
good.
that was, yeah. I've
You're
been
only
practicing.
missing the afro.
He didn't like it, so
He
whatever.
didn't. He hated it.
So
Yeah.
what's the point of all this? I mean, is it okay? So when I was watching,
What is life, Brian?
when I was watching,
Can I ask one question first
Sure.
before you ask that? Is it meant to be that bad, or is this just where we are?
Is
with
it bad or is it really good?
No, it's bad.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
no.
you know, art is subjective. It's just what it can be, what it can do. It's
Okay.
very low fidelity, but it's
Yeah.
also possible. Like he was talking, like this could run on my phone. It could probably run on a watch.
Right.
You know, and just
Right,
stream it out to
right.
Twitch or something like that.
Right.
And you run into fewer problems. Also, there's a cool thing with that, or just like, pixel art is big in video games. The lower fidelity is, the more forgiving you can be of it.
I meant more the content. I guess my question is, will it eventually learn what a joke actually is?
So
or is there no feedback to, like humans learn what a joke actually is because people laugh or they don't, or your brothers punch you.
Right.
Is it going to have that kind of feedback where eventually we'll be like, this is funny, or is it always going to...
You know, I think given enough time, you know, it probably could. I was wondering, and we were kind of speculating that maybe it was like every so often it would like maybe not refresh. And I don't really think that's the point of this thing.
Right. And that's part of what I'm
Is to
asking,
be
yeah.
endlessly, like
Right.
theoretically, yes, in time,
Right.
because it's based on GPT-3. So as they add more data and refine what GPT-3 is, eventually that could get better as well. But it could be intentionally handicapped to the point where it's like, I'm only doing this. This is just art.
this is it. This
This
is what it is.
This is all it will ever be.
Yeah, that's the heart of my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think going back to matter being created from nothing, it's
Of
not.
course.
The more inputs that humans give it, because I know like ChatGPT is sort of a beta right now. It's free, but there's an idea that at some point there might be a ChatGPT Pro that you would be charged for some of these services.
Sure.
But I think as long as humans are refining how it's learning, I think you could create something that would only look at comedy and learn comedy if you gave it those parameters, you know,
Right.
and tell it, well, study Seinfeld, study comedians.
Right.
And I think just like it did the poem, it could start to understand how to write jokes. And there were jokes in there, but I think what did the fish say when he ran into the wall was one of them. Damn! Which is funny. But I think those jokes were taken directly from that scrape
From where
of
it's
the
scraping.
internet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like this entire sentence is a joke.
Yeah.
And they're going to use it. But I think at some point it is going to learn. ChatGPT is already learning based on feedback that humans are giving it on its
Right.
responses.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, in a matter of time, you could have a ChatGPT or whatever it's going to be called. I think that's a trademark name.
Sure.
But, something that's exclusively – they're already talking about using AI in court as defense attorneys. So there's already been a case, I believe,
Yes,
where a
yeah.
defendant relied solely on artificial intelligence
Yeah.
to help it through the court process. So
Yeah, I
telling
didn't
it
see what
to
the outcome
say.
was.
I don't know what it – yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know what
I heard it
happened.
was
say.
going to happen, but that was it.
And I think it was
Yeah.
court approved. I don't think it was just like this random idea. I think
But I
I
imagine
wonder
that would
how
be like
that went. Which
I don't know
now
anything
I
about
need
the
to
case,
go
but I do
back
know
and
it
read
came
about
up.
that. Yeah.
And so you could have AI specific to law, specific to cooking, specific to comedy. So
Right.
yeah, I do see. But why?
Why?
That was my question a while ago. Yeah, why? What are we doing, and do we really want to do this?
So this is just a digital machine, right? Like remember back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, stuff like that, they had dreamt of machines would come along and they would get so good that they would replace human productivity. So you'd have George Jetson who comes to an office one day a week, works 1 hour, and presses a button. That was the dream. And somehow...
Still is.
Well, yeah, it is. Yes, exactly. But the idea that it could replace some of these parts of maybe tedious human experiments or experiences. What I notice a lot of people do in seeing how they interact with ChatGPT and even other stuff is, and even in my experiments with ChatGPT, is being able to fill in ideas. Like, hey, I pitched it. 2 ideas for like books I would love to write. It's like, how do I get there? These are my characters. This is kind of my situation. And I know people use that to like build out an outline and maybe not precisely. And then since it is conversational, you can say, okay, well, in the 3rd act, this giant comet comes and destroys the earth. What do I do then? Well, this, and this. And of course, it's being used on sites like CNET and other online sites too, and they've been talking about it forever, but they're just taking raw data and writing out these articles. So it's just gotten better from Ask Jeeves, which was completely useless, but it's gotten so much better.
But Bill does get a little apocalyptic at the end. So, I mean, he keeps pushing... Well, because it keeps saying, well, I'm just a machine. I'm only here to help. We're not here to take over. I always tell the truth.
Yeah.
But Bill does say, well, what's worst case scenario, right? And then ChatGPT is like, well, yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, and the whole thing, the singularity, is this idea that at some point AI is going to surpass our capacity to contain it. And that is the singularity when it comes to AI.
Right.
And there was even a date in there that I've seen,
it's like 2045 or something.
I've seen even 7 years from now where we're going to go over that threshold. So I guess that's the why, is it inevitable? I kind of think it is. And is it going to be as benign as AI would like us to think it's going to be? Because then Bill also talks about, I think it's in the article, about how artificial intelligence would take over and essentially do away with humans. Nuclear weapons are controlled by computers. Well, what if AI takes over? What was that? Is that the Terminator?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There are ways for the computers to win if we're not careful.
Yeah.
So.
Remember Whopper War Games? Like that was
the movie War Games.
The movie War Game. Yeah. Matthew Broderick's calling. Yeah.
NORAD right here.
Right here. Exactly. Looks exactly like that. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a concern, but we go back to. It's not an intelligence, right? It's just a series of
But does it have to be to really mess things up?
That depends on what you put in charge of, right?
Can it learn? Okay, I'm sure this has been asked, but I don't know the answer. If all the input is human and humans lie, can it learn to lie?
Theoretically, yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, that's a good question because there was an article that I read early on when ChatGPT first hit the scene, and somebody had asked it about Locke and Hobbes, 2 political philosophers.
Right.
Locke was, I'll probably get this wrong. Send comments to Helen Lewis, H. Lewis. Locke, I believe, said that this was the whole wilderness idea and society, and do we need society, and what would happen if society sort of broke down, would everybody be kind to one another?
Right.
And Locke, I think, said, look, human nature overall is kind and caring and you want your fellow man to succeed. And Hobbes was the opposite of that and said, no, in the state of the wilderness, it's everybody for themselves and it would be chaos without, society in place. So ChatGPT did a paper on that but mixed it up. So it wasn't a lie, but it wasn't true, and it didn't catch itself. A human caught it and said, no, this is backwards.
Yeah. One of the disclaimers that it gives you when you go in there is saying, hey,
we're not perfect.
I don't have the sum of human knowledge, so I'm not going to be accurate like all the time. But I think there are core ideas in there and concepts of this is what this is. It is not another thing. Fire is not water, except in very particular. So it may mix up particulars and facts and confuse philosophers and existentialism and stuff like that. But as it gets more data, I think it's just going to get better and better.
So can it also so we've got, one of the problems that was raised was students using it to write their papers, and then somebody came out with an app that can identify ones that are ChatGPT written papers. Can it then take the way that app works and learn to work around it? Is that the next step?
Yeah. Haven't you seen The Incredibles?
No.
Oh, yeah.
But that's interesting too, because I think now you have all these industries or sub-industries that are going to pop up because of artificial intelligence, and a lot of it's going to be policing AI, like the fact that there's already an app to tell you if ChatGPT did this or a human did this.
Right.
And we're just out of the gate here. So I think you're going to see a lot of stuff pop up surrounding AI. but is not AI, not directly AI. It'll be managing AI, ways to do that. So,
right. If it can knock out the more mundane functions of the stuff that we do, not specifically here, but just as people, I mean, people are going to use it like any other tool.
Right.
You know?
But there is a lot of fear that it will take some people's jobs. And, you know, journalists have talked about that. And we talked about attorneys. You know, at some point, I think it's going to be pretty powerful and smart, and we're gonna have some choices to make. So
and that's when you get into a whole conversation about basic income and all that stuff.
And, the whole ethical side of letting robots do people's jobs. And
there was a video. It was by CGP Grey, and it's, humans need not apply. And it was basically the AI revolution and the advancement of this kind of computational thinking. Is basically the new way that machines replace people. Because back in the day, you know, you'd have cars replace horses, farm equipment replace hoes and rickshaws and all that stuff. But now we're getting so sophisticated with our machines that it's replacing the stuff that we were replacing our physical effort,
but now intellectual.
Now we're replacing the creative and
the art and all of that too.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
AI art won first place at the Colorado State Fair. It won first place in one of the categories.
It was a Mid-Journey
and there was
picture.
A huge kerfuffle.
Yeah, we talked about that on an episode of Hot Takes and Streaming Breaks.
Did you really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue for promoting your show.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Check out Hot Takes and Streaming Breaks.
Every other Tuesday. So far every Tuesday.
Yep. Yeah. With Nick Raven and friends. We could talk all day. I have a feeling about this, but we're not gonna.
What if we just opened up Nothing Forever?
And let it close out the show for us?
Exactly.
That would be great. All right. Well, thank you, Nick and Helen, for joining us today in the studio. Don't forget to pick up this week's issue of 6035 magazine, available on newsstands and in mailboxes around the city. Check out our new website, 6035media.org. If you'd like to share anything about the podcast or the publications, mostly podcasts. Go to podcasts at 6035media.org. And tell all your friends. This show is directed by Dave Gardner, produced by Nick Raven and Dave Gardner. Music is by Jeremiah Walter. Our digital media specialist is Sean Cassidy. Art director is Dustin Glatz. Publisher is Amy Gillentine. And I'm Bryan Grossman, editor-in-chief. We'll see you next time on the 6035.
The 6035.